was just in Iceland for a chess tournament. While I was there, I got invited to do a segment on their biggest television channel. Of course, I got paired up against none other than international master Eric Rosen. Here's how the game went. Okay, so I had the black pieces, which means that I'm gonna play the French defense. Here you play this slightly annoying sideline that you don't see too often. And since he had 2 pawns putting pressure on d5, I decided to have 2 myself so that I could get in the future. I played bishop before because I wanted to create a pin on the knight and potentially double his pawns up later. Here I continued with a pretty standard French plan. You want to get your pawn to d5 and to c5. So even though he was playing a sideline, I figured that I could probably stick to the mainstream French ideas here. Funny story, while I'm thinking here, you see the sponsor blush? It was a sex toy company in Iceland on national TV. I had no idea.
I thought they invited you on TV and that's when you decided to stay silent.
That's
You know,
true.
they invited us here not because we're good at chess, but because we're entertaining.
I'm trying to entertain you with my moves again.
I was honestly expecting a little bit more trash talk during the game, but then we both ended up taking it so seriously. I have a big mouth, but I was playing someone a lot higher rated, so I wanted to focus here. And it might be an obvious move, why am I taking so long after a3? But I could take on d4 or I could take on c3. I decided to just keep it simple, which I try to do more in blitz games. And this position is different than other French games because I don't have a pawn on d5, so I was trying to figure out a way to get my knight onto d5 instead. I also wouldn't want to get my knight on d5 if he could kick it out in the future with a pawn on c4, so those were the kinds of plans I was thinking about right now. So bishop g5, he was pinning my knight on e7, so I moved my queen out of the pin and wanted to put some pressure on c3. There was actually a line here where he could castle, and then if I play queen takes c3, he takes my knight on e7, I take, he plays bishop b5, and then I get a pawn, but I can't castle. I did think it was pretty tricky, and that's probably what he was thinking about here. That being said, at some point in blitz, when you take too long, you just go for the simple move instead, which is why I think he just went for bishop d2, which I was happy about because then I got a developing move and now a tempo pushing his bishop back. I went for c4 really quickly. I honestly should have considered taking on d4 because then he would have had a backwards pawn. But, you know, I was playing blitz and I still liked my initial idea of somehow getting my knight onto d5. I didn't love the fact that he had this bishop on the long diagonal, putting pressure on my rook. So here I was trying to slowly improve the position of my pieces. I also wasn't eager to castle super quickly because both of his bishops are looking towards my king, including his queen and bishop combination. And that's one of the things that's always really scary about the French, that computer engines are like, oh, don't worry, just castle, you'll be fine, because they see 100 million moves ahead. But as a human, I mean, obviously I can't castle now because I'd lose my pawn on h7, but even if it's protected, you get scared even in moments when you shouldn't be. So I just continued developing for now. Bishop d7. I didn't want to put my bishop on b7 because then I was thinking maybe moves like rook b1 for him, putting pressure on the semi-open file, and then I wouldn't be able to move my knight on the center. So I decided to just start making my pieces develop, and with the idea of in the future getting my rook off a8 as well. Okay, so knight h4. He's preparing f4, which is kind of the scariest pawn push in positions like this. And I'm always really afraid of dealing with f4 and f5. So I played g6, and this actually wasn't a good move. And I'm just going to pause for a second. And Eric Rosen makes a mistake here, but if he just puts his knight back on f3, my position is way more awkward because now I can't castle as easily since there's a huge hole on g7 and h6. However, he went for the straightforward aggressive plan of f4, and now my g6 move is okay because it does prevent f5. I'm in no rush to castle where all of his pieces are looking, so I just get my rook out of the long diagonal, I put it on b8, and I'm trying to prepare some kind of future with a b4 pawn push. Here, I finally decide to castle. I don't know what about the move g3 made me feel a little bit safer. I guess I felt like he'd lose a move if he'd play g4 after. I didn't want to castle, but I didn't really want to leave my king in the center of the board either. And I was always keeping in the front of my mind, can he play f5 yet, or am I okay for now? By the way, we made our own chessboards and pieces. BotezLive.shop if you want to support the channel. All right, now back to the game. Bishop g2, he was just repositioning his pieces. He was starting to get under time pressure, which we both are, so you'll see us playing faster. I was trying to improve the position of my pieces, as was he. And now he goes g4, kicking one of my knights away and preparing potentially a future f5. Knight g5 is a move that feels really scary, and I had to calculate if there's any sacrifices, but I didn't see anything. I had to form a plan somewhere because I already basically put my pieces on their best squares. I wanted to go for a b4 pawn push, but my queen was in the way, so I'm pretty sure that's... Yeah, so here I decide to move my queen out of the way, maybe get an a5, b4 in the future. Here he's repositioning his knight to look towards f6 and d6. I don't want his knight on either of those squares, but I can't do anything about it, so I just continued with my plan. Hey, excuse me, camera guy. That's okay. The camera can block us. I moved my queen out of the way because I wanted to push b4, and I didn't want to end up getting my queen attacked or pinned. I wasn't ready to push b4 yet, and I saw that my rook could be improved from f8 to d8, so I was really okay playing a slow plan, because as soon as I would make any kind of pawn break, I'd have to be very confident that hopefully it works. Queen a6, I was defending c4 so that I could push b4 in the future without any worries of the queen gobbling up the pawn on c4. He was really ramping his attack on my king, and I did not like what was coming, but at least I had my own plan as well. I always like seeing my higher rated opponents thinking and squirming a little bit. Heck yeah. Rook g1 makes a lot of sense. He's putting his rook in front of my king, and yes, there's 3 pawns in the way right now, but what he wants to do is open it up. And honestly, this move was starting to get to me because, again, I was seeing ghost threats, so I made not the best move. King f8, I was just considering maybe even running my king over to d7 in the future, because I thought it might be safer there than on the king side. But then I remembered that if I'm ever going to open up my queen side... Oh my gosh, did you see me moving the bishop back and forth? I was not sure what to do, and I was getting in time pressure. If I'm opening up the queen side, I can't actually keep my king in the center of the board, so I decided to leave him on f8, and that's why it wasn't such a good move. His attack was finally coming in here, and as you can see, the computer loves his position. I was starting to get in serious trouble here. I didn't want to open up my king, so I didn't even take on f5. I took on c3 thinking, hey, his position is better, but at least I'm opening up the file for my rook to potentially get to b2 in the future. Here he plays e6. Not the computer's favorite move, but from a human point of view, very scary because he's just trying to pry open my kingside pawns here. Bishop a4. Not the best move, but I wasn't sure what to do. And here I played knight f5, and as you can see, the engine hates my move, but Eric Rosen played too quickly, so I'm going to pause the video. He could have actually played queen takes f5, Botez gambit, and there is a checkmate in 7 if you want to try and find it. It's one of those moves where you're never going to calculate it all the way to the end, especially in a blitz game, but you usually have a feel for when sacrifices will work. He could have played queen takes f5, g takes f5, bishop h3 check, my king goes to h8, his bishop goes to g7, my king goes to g8, and from then on, you can try and find the checkmate if you want, but I think it was just too deep for him to try and calculate in this moment, which is why he went for another move that looks very good on the surface, bishop h3, because he's opening up his rook on g1, he's now attacking the knight on f5 with the bishop, but it misses another very scary move I have, which is rook b2, and yay, the computer likes my position again. He blocks with the knight, and here I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to win a piece. He played e7, he was trying to create some kind of counterplay, and here I was like, that's fine, I'm gonna give away a piece here because I have this discovery attack, I'm getting another queen, and now his king was finally the one in trouble. I was so excited at this point. I didn't realize if I was actually going to beat him, but I was like, oh my god, finally, I'm going to get a win against Eric Rosen. And there it was. Look at it. Even when he's losing, he's smiling and such a nice guy.
Crazy game.
That was so
Armageddon.
And hey, we love seeing Botez Gambits on national TV. If you want to see the second match, make sure to watch it on Eric Rosen's channel. Thanks for watching.